My name is Jonathan Lawley. I live in the UK, but most of my life I've worked in Africa. I'm here to give a talk to Stellenbosch University Business School on the leader's angle. My talk is called Culture, Confidence and Change, the New Africans and an Unfolding Success Story. An edited version of the talk follows. I was born in India during the days of the British Raj. 10 years spent there as a child had a deep influence on me. After independence, the family moved to southern Rhodesia, and I was sent to school at St Andrews, Grahamstown, and then Rhodes University. There, in a French department with incredibly high standards, I learnt the language from scratch. This was the key to getting jobs across Africa in the DRC, Morocco, and Mauritius later in life. Colonial service was in northern Rhodesia, and I loved northern Rhodesia right from the start. I had a lot to learn. I had my first real conversations with black people. With the appointment of the first black DOs in 1961, we were truly on our way to training a civil service which could run an independent Zambia, but we were some way off. Zambia made many mistakes, like politicizing the provincial administration. The black DOs I have mentioned on independence were put in charge of ministries. Luckily, our standards had been high, and in the main, they managed magnificently. It struck me at the time, and it strikes me now, that Zambians and Africans learn very fast. I followed Zambia's progress from a little further north in the Congo, where in the mid-1970s, Charter Consolidated, Anglo-American's international arm, was establishing a mine. It was Mauritius where I secured a consultancy position in 1977 after the demise of the Zaire project that I became particularly aware of the importance of cross-cultural strengths. Here, in an understated way, Mauritians had culture-based strengths which complemented each other to form a strong national culture. The result now is a country with an education level as high as the UK and other European countries. In 1980, I was asked by the British government to help supervise the election when southern Rhodesia became Zimbabwe. Peace came very quickly to that country. There was, within a few years, a new, well-educated, black professional class, and the future, to my mind, was looking very bright. I've just given you the background to what the main thing I want to talk about this evening is the development of indigenous management for Africa. But in 1982, I gained a new life-changing appointment. I was given the job of director of the Zimbabwe Technical Management Training Trust, ZTMTT, based in London, and funded by the Rio Tinto Company to set up and run a program to develop indigenous technical management potential for the mining industry as a whole in southern Africa. At that time, there were no blacks in technical management positions on the mines of Zimbabwe, Botswana, or Namibia. The need was urgent, particularly in Namibia, where the Rio Tinto Company had interests in a country which was moving really quite fast towards independence. Hundreds of black technical graduates with little or no work experience. The country needed to turn at least some of these people into effective managers as quickly as possible. Management, decision-making, and leadership had always been the role of whites. Blacks had always been subordinates. Add to this the difficulty for management to get used to the idea of black management, conservative managements. It would be difficult for the black managers to gain acceptance and recognition from fellow blacks too, particularly the older men, the mudalas, who would not regard them as the genuine article. For my job, I reported to the mining director. This was shows that this was taken very seriously in Rio Tinto. Ronnie Walker, a far-sighted Scot with many years' experience in Africa. The approach we decided on was take trainees away from their country, and we were talking mainly about Namibia, Zimbabwe, to a certain extent Zambia, Botswana, still under the sway of race-based stereotyping and self-stereotyping, and give them a mix of work experience and business skills training in another culture. The business skills training took place at the City University in London and linked the theory to the practical side of their training. It led to an MSc degree. The first intake of 8 trainees were all obviously highly intelligent with good technical degrees. Their work experience after graduating was very limited. My instinct was to treat them with greatest care and sensitivity, amounting, I fear, to sort of really almost mollycoddling. As regards work experience, I asked the mines and smelters to give them a mix of experience, even perhaps consult them on their needs. I was wrong on just about every count. First, I had given the trainees the impression that we valued them so highly and that they were so special that they could argue the toss on just about everything, and we would give way. We'd been spoiling them rotten. At the same time as the trainees spent only a limited time in particular departments, they were not getting to know people and making friends. Furthermore, the opportunity and incentive to make friends was lessened by being on attachment in pairs, so they could rely on each other to an extent. Clearly, a totally new approach was called for. Our thinking was right, but we had not foreseen a block which we had inadvertently encouraged. We had not disabused trainees of the idea that they had a right to be helped and that somehow we were giving them an automatic qualification to a senior management position. We had to start again. And for me, despite all my years in training in Africa, the basic lesson was simple. Achievement is never automatic, and you have to struggle for it. A change of policy to reflect this reality brought almost instant results. It was not difficult to get trainees to understand that unless they put themselves forward, produced useful work, and showed keenness and a willingness to learn and to make friends, they would be wasting everybody's time. In the event, all accepted and thrived on the new, tough approach and started to make rapid progress. I think our initial mistakes reflected the common misconception that people can be helped by making the normal challenges of life easy and trying to bypass the hard school of experience and reality. Though we had set up for Africa and for the mining industry as a whole, news of our success spread around the Rio Tinto group worldwide. We were persuaded by Paracatu gold mine in Brazil to take several Brazilians on the program during the final years of the program, and all of them did very, very well. The first intake of trainees, due to lack of pre-course work experience and the soft approach, were perpetuating the dependency culture and were only moderately successful on their return home. From the second intake onwards, the managements became increasingly enthusiastic. Perhaps most significant and perhaps the most relevant thing, as far as I'm concerned, about this whole exercise is the way trainees see themselves. The constant themes are of change, enablement, and confidence. It was a matter of self-discovery leading to career-changing capability. I make no apology for detail the ZTMTT achievement. In Southern African terms, it was monumental because it showed what could be done for people, or really, rather, what they could do for themselves in a very short time. The men and women who passed through the program have gone on to spearhead a new breed of indigenous technical management throughout Southern Africa. They fill many top positions in the mining industry and provide the role models for others to follow. ZTMTT led the way in the rapidly changing scene in Zimbabwe and the region. The 11 years it existed coincided with very rapid indigenization in the country. When there were no blacks in management in 1980, in 1990, the majority managers were black, and with no drop in production levels. After retiring from Rio Tinto, the company offered me a secondment to become the Africa director of a wonderful organization called the British Executive Service Overseas, BISO, which provided some of the most effective aid that it is possible to give. This was on-the-spot, one-to-one skills training in any discipline you can imagine to business people, usually small entrepreneurs across the continent. It was given free by retired British volunteers. We had about 5,000 people on our books. I appointed representatives in most countries, and together we looked for assignments as varied as training bakers in Lusaka, bankers in Madagascar, ballet school teachers in Maputo. As I traveled over sub-Saharan Africa and witnessed the thirst for learning and how the continent was changing at a great rate, I saw governments which had been nervous of outsiders accept that such people brought in skills from which the locals learned. I saw the rapid emergence of high flyers, including doctors, bankers, accountants, environmentalists, engineers, and diplomats. It surely has to be Africa that decides what's best for Africa. Considering where Africa was coming from, the speed of change has been extraordinary. The reasons for this are that, unlike some parts of the world, African cultures embrace education, learning, and change. They are also capable of putting up with high levels of uncertainty. Add to these culture-based strengths communication skills and progressive attitudes towards the role of women in society, and you have a good recipe for rapid progress. Africa wants closer relations with South Africa. You have a lot to learn from each other. Some countries overcame problems 40 years ago that you are facing now. Frankly, I find it disappointing that it is still difficult to recruit South African companies into the Business Council for Africa, many of whose members have been doing business for decades and has a network of representatives in nearly all sub-Saharan countries. Of course, the new Africans are not all black. I met many white South Africans. I meet many white South Africans who are new Africans. The attitudes to race is totally different from their parents' generation. I want to say that despite your massive problems, largely caused, it seems to me, by the delay in achieving majority rule, that every time I come here, I notice a change for the better. Finally, I want to say that engaging more fully with the rest of Africa will not be all plain sailing, but that it is your destiny, and it will not be long before you have stronger ties and deeper understanding of Africa than anyone else. No, thank you very much indeed. Real honor to be here.